ultimately, what do we want as writers? That if we feel something truly and strongly, maybe we think somebody else out there would connect with the words which we've written. Corporations with set ways are now being asked to look inwards, and being asked to change. And that's tumultuous, because it's not easy, because there's so many known people we know who come with preconceptions whenever they see you. But with strangers, you can often be your true self, because nobody comes with any preconceptions about you. You see, the focus is so strongly on inwards in the profits which you're making, that you think of sustainability as a cost.
Hi, welcome to the Mohua Show. My name is Mohua Chinappa and I am an author, entrepreneur, and ex-housewife. This podcast is about everything from business to technology to arts to lifestyle, but done and spoken ईमानदारी से. Hi, in today's podcast, we have with us Sunil Bhandari, a chartered accountant, poet, podcaster. Chartered accountant, poet is quite an, it's a surprise that we're going to get down to hear Sunil about how the poetry has come out, and a philanthropist. With over 3 decades of experience in finance, he manages a large conglomerate. His passion for poetry has led to 2 Amazon bestsellers of Love and Other Abandonments and of Journeys and Other Ways to Get Lost. His work has been featured in numerous compilations, and he's a respected figure in the Calcutta poetry circle. His podcast, Uncut Poetry, is heard in nearly 70 countries. He also hosts Red River Sessions, interviews with poets, and publishes a cultural newsletter, The Uncuts. As the Calcutta Chair for Social Ventures Partners, he contributes to philanthropy. He also critiques films for Hindustan Times digital platform OTTPlay. Sunil Bhandari, a man of many talents, balances his professional creative pursuits with a lot of grace. So, Sunil, thank you so much for taking out the time today morning and doing this podcast with me. So, could you just tell me a little bit about your journey from being a chartered accountant with more than 3 decades of experience in the industry and then suddenly finding poetry in all of this? How did that shift happen?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a little bit of a tale, if I may tell you about it. Nice little story, actually. So I need to go back. Those are the days when you actually asked your dad what is the kind of profession you should get into, right? So here I was, past my class 12, and talking to my dad, and I said, I want to be a writer and I want to do BA English literature. And those are the times when the only 3 professions which really worked were either you're an engineer or a chartered accountant or a doctor. Those are the only 3 professions which really mattered. And my dad was an engineer and he was bent, yeah, I shouldn't become one for whatever reason. So he said, come along, beta, that's not what you should be doing. So I said, no, that's where my passion lies. That's what I want to do with my life. So he said, you'll become a professor in English. What will you do with that? Nobody will marry you. So, so I said, Acha, what's the route to both nirvana and marriage? So he said, you know what you should do? You should do chartered accountancy. You'll get a lovely wife and then keep writing on the side. Things as it were. I actually started doing my chartered accountancy. But the thing was that writing was something which I used to do right from the beginning. I can't even remember from when I started writing. It was scribbling all over. And I still remember that it was such a thing that I used to write on napkin papers. And if I'm playing football and suddenly a line came to my mind, I actually used to run back to my home, write that line down, and then go back and start playing football. So actually, there were 2 parallel the roads going in my life all the time. The one which was there for a living, and the one which was actually giving me some kind of a life, which was the writing part. So that's how the whole thing really started, my getting into chartered accountancy and my corporate career. But side by side, I kept on writing. Yeah.
I've never met a chartered accountant who's a poet. So, I mean,
Oh, you said it. I keep hearing that all the time. I tell you, not only that, a, a chartered accountant from Rajasthan who's also a poet. I mean, that kind of tells people that what are you? Where are you from? What planet are you from?
I would really like to believe that you're more of a poet than a chartered accountant.
Oh, I'll endorse that.
So, what inspired you to start poetry? Was it heartbreak? Was it falling in love with someone? Was it, somebody that you met and she broke your heart, and that's when you wanted to put it all out on paper? What made you start writing poetry?
Oh, I wish it was something so interesting. But I must tell you, I remember in school, the only classes I loved were the English classes. We at that time had Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, and there was Great Expectations, and there was this brilliant collection of poems put together in a book called Panorama. I don't know who put it together, but even now I remember there were such fabulous poems which were put together. And I think the ones which I really enjoyed were when we studied the poems. It was, I think, even at that time, I loved how much complexity could be packed in the simplicity of a good poem, you know. And it was almost an extension of what I loved hearing that I started writing. And uh, in fact, the other day, I discovered, I think it must have been the first poem I ever wrote, and it was in a maths exercise book scribbled alongside a very impervious calculus calculation. There was a poem written, so I tend to believe that possibly it was the dullness of what I used to study is what really moved me to start writing poetry as some kind of a shelter from all the terrible calculus and the trigonometry lessons which I had to do. uh,
How do you balance all the calculus and all the non calculating part of life?
yeah, you know, one of the most difficult things, and once you get the secret, one of the easiest one is to steal time. I think all of us are burdened with so many commonplace compulsions of our life. It could be social, it could be official, professional, whatever. We are pulled in all directions, and I think the important thing to eke out something which is valuable to you is to literally steal time. And I think one of the and I'm blessed with this particular discovery, and I did it very early in my life, is to wake up early. It sounds so dull, Mahua, but believe me, it's life changing. So I wake up early in the morning at 4:35, and there's something unusual which I do. Actually, I go out for a walk, and I walk for about 1.5 hours every morning. And whilst I walk, because it's so early in the morning, there's nobody there at all. I write while I walk. So that's I mean, when I tell people this, they say, how is it even possible? So digital, you have your mobile, and I've got my notepad there, and I write there, and it's absolutely empty, the roads. So I walk and I write, and that's where I do all my writing. So my writing becomes like a morning journal. It kind of captures all the hauntings of the night, and I put it down. And it also becomes 1.5 hours of writing which I finish off right in the beginning of the day. It leaves me like ready for the day, so. And then I'm off to office, and that's where the other battle begins. But I'm ready to face it all because I've got such a great beginning in the day. Yeah, so
So I
that's
think,
how I can balance the writing and the business part of it. Yeah.
which is a great tip, I think, for a lot of us, because I think mornings are very meditative. And I completely agree with you with that. Though I don't wake up at 4:30, I used to a long time back. But and I need to kind of, after talking to you today, I need to restart that all over again. Yeah, because at that time I think everybody is quiet and everyone's sleeping, and there's that whole the time when you can really connect with yourself. So can you yeah, so Sunil, can you just share some insights about your bestseller book, of love and other abandonments? Do you have a poem right now close to you? The book is there for you to read.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I
I
would
haven't
love.
got the book, but I can certainly share a book. But I must tell you the story about of love and other abandonments. There's so many lovely things which happened around. It's a belief of mine that when you're afraid to do something, but you push yourself to do it, and then when it happens, there's so many magical things which keep happening in your life. And I must tell you the kind of things which happened to me when this book came out. So when I had put together this book, and there was so much joy in putting it together, I can't even imagine. I mean, you can imagine. You got your books out also, so you know how it's like a baby which comes out. And I was thrilled, and I said, "Ki, need to get someone to read it, someone who might like to comment on it also." And the only person I could think of was Gulzar. How to reach him? Now I started hunting around, and I found a friend who knew him, not very well, but knew him. I said, "Boss, I'm sending you my book. Do reach it across to him. If he comments on it, if he reads, it's fantastic. If he doesn't, well, effort was there at least." And he reached it out to Gulzar. I remember I was in the States on work, and Gulzar was in Dubai, and he called me from there. And he said, मैंने आपकी किताब पढ़ी, इतनी अच्छी किताब है, ये तो मैं अपने बेड साइड में रखने वाला हूँ. The Gulzar telling me that. And then he wrote a little note from me, an excerpt of which I, of course, put at the back of my book. And it was so, so, so beautiful. We all write for ourselves, uh, because that's where true writing comes. When some validation comes from others, it's so thrilling. And when someone like Gulzar takes the trouble of picking up the phone and talking to you and talking about your book, it's really thrilling. And that was lovely. The other thing which happened from that book, and I think I'll read that poem, is there's this young duo of singers called Shorindra and Somujit. So they were doing this whole series with various artists, and they had Sharmila Tagore to come in, and they said that, we have these poems, can you choose one of them and we will weave a song around it. And she chose one of the poems from my book. And there's this, and you must check it out, there's a YouTube video which you'll find, which Somajit and Surendra put together. So it's their song weaved with my poem which Sharmila is reciting, and it became a huge viral thing. And she actually did a live show where she did the recitation in Calcutta, and I went and talked to her, and she was thrilled. She said, "I've read the whole book, it's so brilliant, I loved it, and this poem was so beautiful." So those are lovely things. And then after a year, I found Shabana Azmi reciting one poem from the book in an NCPA program. So these things which are just happening, and I just came to hear of it, and it was so thrilling. So that's the little story around the book which came out. So it was really, really thrilling, and a heartwarming journey for me, this first book of mine. Yeah.
It's fascinating, Sunil, for you to get this sort of validation from such well-known artists, from
Yeah.
all across with your first book. So obviously, this may have been also the inspiration for your second book of Journeys and Other Ways to Get Lost. Am I right on that?
So that was a different story altogether. So I have a friend called Rohini Kejriwal. She runs the Alipur Post, which of course is one of the pioneer newsletters of poetry from India. She does a great job of it, and she started this thing during Poetry Month. Let's all write a poem a day. I said, "This is crazy. How can you even do that?" She said, "Let's try it out." So along with her, I started writing a poem every day for 30 days. It was crazy. But what emerged was some extremely powerful poems which were raw and very immediate in their impact and effect. And at the end of it, Rohini and I talked, and she said, "Why did you put it together into a book and just let it go?" And that became a self-published book, and that's what I did. The beauty of that book, and the reason why it's so close to my heart, is it's got lots of photographs, and all of them have been taken by me. So I actually spent a lot of time in putting together the photographs and the poems together, so they've formed a nice little whole. And literally that book is a beauty to behold. I love that book in many, many ways. So that's how that book came out, in a very funny way.
How wonderful, Sunil. That is amazing. I would like you to read one of your, poems from your book.
Sure. Okay. Just let me see one sec.
Sure.
Let me read the one which Sharmila recited. I think
Please do that.
it's an old one. It's very simple, but like all simple things, it has its own profundity. So let me read it one sec. Yeah. So it's called Coffee, You and Me. Write me in, stranger, into your poem once. I see you brewing with your coffee as you look at me fondly. I am much of what you see. I'm also what you think me to be. We could build our story with that. You will ask no questions. I will tell you no lies. I will be your lines, your finest muse. And then we will return to our realities, knowing ourselves to be better than what the world taught us to be. Coffee with you would take me back to when I was what I dreamt I could be, when life hadn't given me labels. You and I, even as we escape, would be discoverers of our finest selves. You and I, even as we escape, would be discoverers of our finest selves.
Oh my God, Sunil, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just traveled with you. Oh my God. What's the inspiration behind this?
Oh, now that's asking. Let me think. I think, strangely, if I recollect correctly, I wrote this in London. So I was sitting in a cafe and I saw this girl sitting with a coffee there, absolute stranger. And I was having my coffee, and I think we looked at each other. There was nothing which happened. We did not talk, but suddenly there was a kind of a connection which got built as if we knew each other. We just sat there for about half an hour, once in a while looked at each other, and there was this comfort which I found in just her being across 3 tables away, having coffee the way I was having my coffee. After that, we left. So I thought, there was there's so much beauty in strangers when you can be yourself without any preconceptions, etc. Because there's so many known people we know who come with preconceptions whenever they see you. But with strangers, you can often be your true self because nobody comes with any preconceptions about you. And you can really open up and tell secrets to strangers because they will see it and take it as you are there in that moment. So a whole lot of thoughts which were playing in my mind just in that half an hour of an encounter. And this poem came out of that. Yeah.
Amazing, Sunil. I just traveled with you and I could just see you in a coffee shop. And I think you're so articulate in the way you speak. You make your listeners travel with you. And I think you need to do a lot of poetry sessions where you read out your poems. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really. Now let's just talk a little bit about your podcast, the Uncut Poetry and Red River Sessions. So it has garnered a global audience, and what do you hope to achieve, through these platforms, and how do they complement your work as a poet and an author?
So I started Uncut Poetry sometime in 2020. So it was very much a pandemic baby. All of us were looking for things which we could start and do and make get some value out of it. Around that time, I had started listening to a lot of podcasts, and I was a real kida for hearing new podcasts, and I found that to be such a powerful medium because you have people all over the world putting this out, and I'm in India listening to them and enjoying them. So I thought, why not do it with poetry? I started hunting around, and there were quite a few lovely poetry podcasts, not very many, none from India at all. So I said, let's do it. And right in the beginning, I decided that it won't be others' poems I'll be reading. It'll be my own. I write so extensively, so why not? And that's when Uncut Poetry started. And believe me, it was astonishing. And it's nothing to do, I mean, if it's lasted long, probably it's because of the quality of the poetry I put out. But at the beginning, it was really the medium which took hold of that and just expanded it all over the world. You know how your podcast also just travels all over the world, and you wonder what's happened. So after a year, when I was checking out the analytics, 70 countries it's being heard in. It's being heard in Madagascar, Japan, Bhutan. I mean, how did my poetry reach those places? And I said, my God, this is crazy. I mean, even a bestseller of a book would reach a lot of people, but not so many people in so many countries. And I get mail from people from all over, people writing it from Philippines. One of the countries it's heard most is Philippines. Why Philippines? I have absolutely no idea. But there you are. It's so, I found this is so incredible. And ultimately, I've always completed 200 plus episodes. I've not missed a single week. So I've shown a lot of commitment to it. And I think what it has done is give a lot of saliency to the work I do. What do we want as writers? That if we feel something truly and strongly, maybe we think somebody else out there would connect with the words which we've written. I mean, to me, when I read some of my favorite poets and authors, I feel blessed that these people actually put their talent down, and I am the one who's now reading it years after probably they are dead, and I'm feeling the same feelings and changing my life sometimes because of what they wrote and felt and learned from life. And I hope that even if one or two people can do that with the words I've put together, I think for me that would be a huge, huge thing. Yeah.
Oh yes, Sunil. I We both are totally on the same page, and I too started my podcast during the pandemic, and it was my way of reaching out where I felt so caught inside a box with not a window ahead, and a window I mean poetically, to be able to express yourself. So yes, I mean. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your newsletter now, the Uncuts, which provides, readers a weekly dose of cultural reflections and your musings. So, what kind of content can readers expect from it, and how did you put this together?
So I'm a pretty compulsive writer. I mean, whenever there's something which affects me, I write. So I write on art and architecture, I write on films, I write on theater, I write on dance, I write on life. I mean, compulsive. Most of it is trash, believe me, Mahua. I mean, I wouldn't have anybody read most of it because it's just down on the paper. Like it's literally I'm seeing a movie and I like something about it and I start writing while the movie is going on. I'm so bad. So I don't necessarily think it's a good habit, but then that's me, unfortunately. So again, just like my poetry, I thought okay, somebody might be interested in what I'm writing. So I thought how to do it. And believe me, Rohini Kejriwal, the Alipur Post girl, she inspired me. And she said that why don't you start a newsletter? And that's how I started the newsletter. I called it the Uncuts, which is a spin-off from Uncut Poetry. But it's a huge mishmash of everything which has haunted me during the week. So it could be a book, a movie, it could be musing, some travelogue, anything which is kind of playing on my mind. I try to bring a cultural connect to it. So it becomes like a public cultural diary, which I put out. And th- it's got some rantings of mine, also some philosophical musings. So it's pretty crazy and a bit of a mishmash. But it's now, I think I've got 125 issues out. That's a weekly thing. And I've got some 3,000 odd subscribers. So obviously, some people seem to be enjoying it and don't mind reading it every Sunday. And I think it's pretty cool and it's great fun to put out what I'm writing anyway into the world. So again, it's just another way of communicating my feelings and what I'm musing on in my life. Yeah.
I completely relate to that because I wake up every morning and I do a post. and I write about whatever is going on in my mind. And we have the power of social media that cuts across boundaries, cuts across geographies, and cuts across
Absolutely.
people all over. And as writers, I think we are all compulsive writers, or else you can't be an author, a poet, or a writer, because it is our first love. Um,
Absolutely.
yes, it is. I relate to it fully. Now, let's just talk a little bit about you being the executive director in the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. How do you perceive the challenge, of sustainability and environmental responsibility that corporations face today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, corporations with set ways are now being asked to look inwards, and being asked to change, and that's tumultuous because it's not easy. But I think there are two factors at play here. One, the desire to be part of the change, and the other is the ecosystem ensuring that you change, otherwise, you'll be left behind. So I think the entire gamut of the elements of the sustainability practices, things like the environmental protection, the renewable energy, the social equity, the education and awareness, it's all started with small steps which are now both reported and celebrated. And we are moving towards defined goals on all these elements, so there are strong conglomerate policies, and these need to be adhered to on an individual level and consequently at a corporate level. So it's a journey. It's not easy to change as persons, it's not easy to change for us. So as corporation, that also is something which becomes a journey. And since we are a conglomerate of so many businesses, we have many businesses which are far ahead in the sustainability journey, some which are left behind. But the advantage of being a part of many businesses is that you can learn from each other. And that's a role which, as part of my role, I'm actually responsible for bridging those inadequacies with the people who are actually doing a good job of it. So it's a journey, and I think the commitment is there. And for me, that is the most important thing, because if the mental makeup is there that yes, we want to do something, there is bound to happen, something's bound to happen. Yeah.
So, let's just talk a little bit about the growth trajectory, right? So how do corporations really effectively address these issues and maintain that? Because eventually growth is the first driving factor for any corporation. And, addressing sustainability coming hand in hand while keeping the growth trajectory together. What should corporations really do? Let's just hear this from you.
See, why is there resistance to bring about anything relating to sustainability? Because there's a cost element. Now the cost element can be seen in two ways. You call it a cost or you call it an investment, right? The investment also could be two things. One is investment in the business, and one is the investment in the entire ecosystem you're working in, the universe you're part of. And that is something which the corporations don't always remember. You see, the focus is so strongly on inwards in the profits which you're making that you think of sustainability as a cost. But when you change your hat and see that you are part of a universe, and if the universe itself is dying or will die or will get destroyed, then where will you be? Once that realization sinks in, one starts thinking in a different way. So I think uh, that is one part of it, that realization. The other part, of course, is the consciousness which has come by. I'll just give you an example. In insurance, for example, many reinsurers like Lloyd's in London have stopped insuring power generation done thermally. So thermal power stations won't get reinsurance. Now that's a huge, huge thing, because the lack of insurance for something as massive as a power station is a game changer. And that has started affecting businessmen, industrialists, in thinking out of the box as to what to do and where to do and where to move now. So it's not only the realization of what it affects, but also that business itself will get affected if we don't take the sustainability route. So, on one hand, your conscience is calling out, and the other, the industry compulsions are making you also do it.
We
So
are
on both
really,
sides.
yeah, we are really facing what we've done in the past to our planet.
Absolutely,
I mean, if you look at the
absolutely.
temperature, the water issues, it is just mad. If, I mean, it's crazy what's going on right now. So let's talk a little bit, Sunil, about philanthropy, and about SVP. So how did you get involved in this, and why did you feel this need?
You know, again, this is something which goes back many, many years. I remember when I was in Xavier's in Calcutta, we had this lovely, lovely thing. Every month, we were all taken to this old people's home in Lower Circular Road, and we used to spend a couple of hours with the old people there. Spend time with them, take small presents to them, just sit and talk to them, read a novel, write a letter for them. And I remember at that time it was so moving, and I understood that sometimes you have to go out of your skin to do something for others, and that is probably more satisfying than anything else. As one progressed in life, one of course started cutting checks for causes. We all do that. A friend who's doing something good, or something we encounter and we feel, oh my god, this needs to be supported. So that is something which one kept doing. I remember, for even now, I support a couple of girls in Nanhi Kali, which is a Mahindra initiative. We all do that. At some point, there was this feeling inside me that there was so much more that I can do, because cutting a check is something, but I have so much to give. I've got so much experience, my professional experience, and I know for a fact that NGOs would do a huge amount to get direction. you know uh, there are a lot of professional people who are getting into the NGO space, but they still struggle. And I started looking around for ways to spend a little time, and I just did not succeed. And either the NGO was doing good work, but the people were people I just did not connect with, or somehow something was. Then there was a colleague of mine, a senior colleague. He was the MD of a company called Zensar, and he reached out and said that there's this thing which I'm the chairman of, called Social Venture Partners (SVP), and it's a philanthropic organization which invites professionals and businessmen and people who want to do more than just cut a check, and want to spend a little time, maybe 2 hours a month or 10 hours a month, whatever they can take out, and spend time with chosen non-profits. And that's like music to me. I mean, I said, this is what I was looking for. And so I started examining them. So SVP itself was started by uh, Ravi Venkatesan, who was the managing director of Microsoft India, and Anu Agha, who was the owner of Thermax. They started it, and it's meant for professionals and people who are otherwise busy but want to get into something called engaged philanthropy. So I met the people, and they were all people like me. They spoke the same language, had the same dreams, wanted to do something, and wanted to do something more in philanthropy. That's when I joined them. And so it's I'm the chairman of the Calcutta chapter, and altogether in Calcutta we support 13 NGOs, and cumulatively, I think for me, the joy I get in seeing a difference being made to lives which have sometimes given up is beyond any accomplishment I might have imagined. And it's spending a few hours every month, and it's so moving, and it's so beautiful. Yeah. So in fact, once I step out of my professional duties, that's the area where I'll be spending most of my time in. Yeah.
Let's just switch a little bit of gears now and talk about your role as a film critic. I don't know. I have to keep switching constantly, Sunil. I've never done that in any of my podcasts till now. 3 times I've switched. I need to hold myself together for this now.
Oh my God.
Talk a little about the digital platform OTT Play that allows you to explore yet another creative medium.
Oh,
Uh,
this is such a fun story, Mahua. I must tell you this. So, this is the power of social media. So, all of us share a lot on Facebook and Instagram and all. So, I used to write, as you now know, I write compulsively. So, I used to write on films very regularly, films I see, and I used to review them on Facebook. You won't believe it. The CEO of OTT Play, he actually read some of my reviews, and he reached out to me. He said, "Listen, you're doing it on Facebook. Why don't you start writing for OTT Play, and we'll pay you for it?" I said, "This is great." And what I used to do on Facebook, I started doing it for OTT Play, which is so thrilling. So for 2.5 years, I've been writing a weekly column there, reviews of films. I've just taken a break because I was just not able to cope up with that weekly discipline on seeing a film and writing about it. It takes a little time, to put it all together. And also, I've taken a break from there. But for 2.5 years, I had such fun, and it's such a lovely platform. And OTT Play, you must check it out. They've got some fantastic writers and they've got some great reviews. And so it's been a great journey for me. Hopefully, I'll start again after I kind of do some time management of my own and get this whole thing
Lovely.
going.
I love films too, Sunil. I think you and me have got tick marks on everything till now that we've spoken to each other about. And I'm coming to Calcutta just to spend time with you and talk about all these things that we share.
Oh, we must do that.
What's your favorite film or the reviews that you've written? Which one did you enjoy the most that you can remember recently?
Asking for a favorite film is one of the most torturous endeavors. But okay, let me talk to you about some films which I think were perfect. I've seen them multiple times and I can't see a single flaw in them. I mean, right off the bat, I would say Aranir Din Ratri, Satyajit Ray's. I mean, I don't know what a genius that man is. I mean, on any day I can take five names of his out of his films, which will probably be in the top 10 list. But somehow this movie is something which affects me, probably because what I am. The other one is a lost film by Aparna Sen called Picnic. I don't know if you've seen it, Mahua. It got released on the Doordarshan. I think now it's lost. I was speaking to Aparna. We've worked together, Aparna and I, on some things, and she said, the original print has just disappeared. They're trying to figure out where it is. What a movie that was! So Picnic was there. Uh, Anand by Rishikesh Mukherjee. What a movie! I mean, it's commercial cinema, but I mean, it transcends so many things. Then I love thrillers. So the Wachowskis, the ones who made the Matrix trilogy, their first movie was called Bound. I think it's one of the most perfect thrillers I've ever seen. Uh, it's fantastic. Um, what else? My comfort movie, the one which I return to when I'm feeling down in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. What a movie. I think, you know, uh, I don't want to be uppity and say, "Oh, I only like Bergman and Satyajit Ray." I mean, the fact is that there are these very powerful commercial movies which give so much happiness, and Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara is up there. It's got poetry, it's got travel, it's got beautiful people. I mean, what else do you want?
The recent one has also done very well. Lapata Ladies, even that's a commercial.
What a
It's what a
movie!
fun film.
What a movie! What a movie! Wonderful movie.
It's
Yeah.
a really
So
good time for films, I think, and Indian filmmakers
I
right now.
agree. And what's happened in Cannes, it's so heartening. Oh my God, I was thrilled to
Absolutely.
bits.
Me too. So many women, so many Indian filmmakers, and saris constantly there. It's really a proud moment for India.
Absolutely.
What's next for
Wonderful.
you now, Sunil? Which are the books and projects? Spill the beans.
So I'm working on a collection, I must confess. So Dibya has been after me. Dibya of Red River has been after me to take out my next book. So I'm putting it together. I'm working on the next poetry book, and it's a torturous and a beautiful process. The collection, the editing, the bringing to a flow, which makes sensory sense. It's crazy, I'm telling you, but it's such an enjoyable thing. So I'm putting that together. Hopefully, August, September, if things go well, I should have that out. Uh, the unusual one, which I want to do, and that's like a private project, is a book of essays. I write short essays extensively, and I want to put it together and take it out. I don't know if I'll find a publisher or not, but let me at least put it together and see where it leads to. So these are the two projects that I'm working for. I want to start a new podcast. Unfortunately, time is a huge thing. Um, there's so many people who are so dear to me, and they are some of the most beautiful people in terms of the work they do, the um, feeling they bring in me, and so I want to start a podcast of spending time with these people, having a chat with them, and talking to them. Unknown people, completely unknown people, who probably might have done something which has created a small ripple somewhere, nothing big, but I want to talk to them because there's so much preciousness which you can find out. I mean, to talk to a NGO leader who works in the slums of Toliganj, uh, spending 9 hours every day there, making a difference to one kid who she taught and who went and got a job in an MNC. I mean, it's one person, you might say, but that one person, one life just got changed. I want to spend time with people like that and understand what makes them go. So I want to start a podcast on that. Time. So let's see how that goes. Yeah.
Wonderful, Sunil. And if you were to collaborate with any artist, who do you think for a poetry collection, who do you think you would choose?
Oh, at a blink, Mary Oliver. I mean, she's, you know, her humanity, her clarity, her ability to find beauty in the moment, her respect for the transient, her sense of finding deep answers in the most commonplace of sights is something which is unmatched, And whenever I read her poetry is so simple but so profound, you know. And I would love to spend time with her. Unfortunately, I can't, but I would love to spend time with her and work with her. And the other thing which I share with her, she's also the only poet I know who used to write while walking. So that's, yeah. So that's something which I share. So I can imagine both of us walking and writing, and oh my
The
God.
walking poet.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on today's podcast, Sunil. It was an honor to have you, and this was so heartfelt. And wishing you lots and lots of luck for all the work that you're going to do. Just maybe one sentence that you'd like to leave, for all our young listeners who may be interested in poetry but are frightened of all the consequences of not really earning too much with poetry, which is the reality we know, and not finding takers also, to publish their books. What is it that you would tell them?
So I would say just write fearlessly, but more than that, read eclectically. Read anything and everything, and you'll find influences of the poets you love flowing into the stuff which you write until you find your own voice emanating from there. So even before you start writing, or concomitantly, you have to start reading. Read extensively. I think one of the big secrets which not many people share is the secret to good writing is good reading, actually. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sunil, for being on today's podcast.
Thank you so much, Mahua. Such a pleasure.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course on all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are The Mohua Show, where we talk ईमानदारी से.